Welcome to America's Horse on America's Trail with the Mustang Discovery Ride. I'm your host, Julianne Neal. With a goal of 5,000 miles, 5,000 Mustangs, the Mustang Discovery Ride team hopes to bring attention to adoption into appropriate homes for these living legends. Enjoy the ride. In this episode of the podcast, we'll take a short break from the trail as Lisanne sits down with Lynn Thomas, president of Horses for Mental Health. The organization is a 501c3 nonprofit founded to increase awareness, public engagement, funds, and access to programs incorporating horses for mental health and personal growth.
So my name is Lisanne Fear. I'm here with the Mustang Discovery Ride. I'm very excited for our guest today because we're going to talk about some mental health. So can you introduce yourself and kind of what you're doing?
Yeah, I'm so honored and excited to meet you and be part of this amazing project that you're doing. My name is Lynn Thomas. I'm a mental health professional and I'm president of Horses for Mental Health, which is a nonprofit organization to bring awareness of the power of horses that horses can bring for mental health and to advocate for more mental health services to include horses. So we're hoping that every person around the world, as they struggle with mental health needs, will think of a program involving horses because it's amazing what horses can do.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you here today because talking mental health is very near and dear to my heart because I think, it's a way of breaking down the taboo of what is mental health when you finally speak out loud about it. And it's obviously very near and dear to my heart to have horses involved in that. For me, particularly Mustangs. So I'm excited to hear what you've seen and experienced from your side of like the mental health side in terms of seeing what those horses are capable of doing in between humans and even like possibly helping the horses along too.
Right. Yeah, well, I do think that this is a benefit for both horses and humans. I think this creates another niche for horses to bring another benefit to the world. I mean, they've been a big part of history over centuries, and now to really focus on mental health needs. I mean, we're in a mental health crisis in the world, and there's such a need for different and new ways to reach people and help us just learn about ourselves and heal and strengthen and grow, and horses can play a big part of that. And I can't wait to hear your story as well, like how they've played an impact in your life. But there's now many programs around the world that are providing these kind of services, and there's trainings, there's professionals who are doing this type of work, incorporating horses specifically for mental health and personal growth. And we're hoping that will continue to expand and provide more accessibility to every person, whether they live in rural areas or in cities.
Yeah, mental health really affects any and all of us, especially in today's modern age. I was actually just reading a book here recently. It was called Meditations with Cows by Shreve Stockton, and it was so great because in it she kind of addresses how previously just doing like the remedial everyday chores of whether it's like mucking pens or milking cows, you have those moments of meditation where you're stuck and it's just this remedial task. It has to be done, but you're left with your thoughts, and like you actually get to ruminate with your thoughts. And so much of today's society in the city, we don't have those moments where it's just the remedial thing. You're jumping from one meeting into the next, coming home, maybe making dinner for the family, trying to help keep progressing, and it's just this constant where we don't really have those moments built into our day anymore. And part of that is the separation where we've gotten away from just being around horses every day. This is why they're so vital, and like horses have played different roles among our lives and history, from maybe originally being a food source to realizing that they're actually capable of so much more. They're sentient beings. They feel so much more, and being able to lead us into battle and war and help us plow our fields and develop agriculture where we can stay in places a little bit more often and develop and grow that way. And now we no longer need them to pull our buggies or anything, but we do need them to help address the mental health crisis that you're talking about today. So my horses have revolutionized my life. I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you today had they not helped save me. I mean, when you're suffering from like depression or anxiety and you just feel paralyzed by the world, you have these beings that like they're not like a human kid. A human kid, you know, at a certain point they can feed themselves, they can heat up macaroni and cheese in the microwave or whatever. But horses and dogs even too, like they're subject to your human, and they need you to come feed them and take care of them. And so just having that little bit every day of being like, well, there is that someone else that actually needs me to get up out of bed and go take care of them. It kind of helps you with the day to day of everything. And so that part of it really helped me in some of my darkest times. Just having that little bit of, even if I got out of bed for just 5 minutes to go do one chore, it just keeps you going just that much more instead of hanging out in your room all day. So yeah, my horses have definitely changed my life. So
Well, I mean, I'd love to hear, because you're on this amazing adventure, this incredible ride that you're doing, and I'd love to hear about that, and then the story of what brought you to this, that why you're doing it.
yeah, so my horses saved my life, and there's 50,000 plus Mustangs standing and holding corrals right now across America, and there's just so much untapped potential. And uh, I feel like personally, my life was changed. I grew up on a 55,000 acre cattle ranch, and I kind of lost that when I was 10, where we had to move off of the ranch and kind of be in town more and converting to like that more domestic way of life, for lack of better words. And I feel like I kind of relate to the Mustangs in that regard, where here was a piece of land that our family was on for generations, and we could go wherever we wanted on this ground, and it was amazing. And then to have that stripped away from you and be forced to like figure out this new society, it's quite the journey. So I feel like I kind of identify with the horses with that. You know, we that's part of life. Life never stays the same for very long. It's constantly changing, and how do we adapt to those new and different changes? And how do we become like good citizens in these new environments that we're kind of sometimes forced to be in? And so that's where I feel like I can connect to the Mustangs on a deeper level. But just being human and going through some of my own mental health issues, you know, my horses saved my life. I was really suicidal there for a while. I had a plan. I had an out. I knew what time of year I was going to do it. I was ready. And as I was writing out my note, essentially like talking about where I wanted my animals to end up, I mean, that's what stopped me, because I had made kind of a promise to these horses that I would take care of them. And in my mind, no one could do it better than I could. So I decided to stick around. And I was in an abusive relationship one time, and that, I mean, my back was knocked out, my neck was knocked out. We went 14 miles back in the mountains with him and his family, and he started saying and doing some of the things that previously he had only done behind closed doors. And the fact that his family kind of stood by him and condoned that behavior, like I was scared. I was scared for my life at that point, and I didn't feel safe anymore. And so we're 14 miles back in the deep mountains of Wyoming, which is really rough and rugged country. My back's knocked out, my neck's knocked out. I can barely move, can barely get in the saddle, but I had 4 Mustangs up there at the time with me, and I was like, "F all of you, I'm out. Like I can't be here." And so I headed solo out of the mountains, and it was just incredible to that here are these 4 previously wild Mustangs, and they're behaving so well, because it was just me and 4 of them all strung up behind me, and they came down out of the mountains. And I called a friend, because again I couldn't really pick much up or do much of anything, and I called a friend to meet me back at the trailhead, and they helped me unload my horses and everything. But kudos to my Mustangs for being there, behaving themselves, being able to kind of think for themselves in that country, because I couldn't really watch them a whole lot or do much of anything if they had messed up. So yeah, my Mustangs are just absolutely incredible. And yeah, I mean, because of that, because of how incredible they are, how much life they've given back to me. There's so many more Mustangs out there that deserve good and loving homes, and so many people that could use their help and power of healing and power of being on this crazy journey. There was a time where my dog was bit by a copperhead snake in Illinois, and he's actually my psychiatric service dog, and to have my dog that I usually rely on to like survive and make it through the day be injured and out and gone, because he got evacuated, and at that time part of my support crew was trying to find a place with anti-venom for him, and it took 2.5 hours for them to get him to where he needed to go. But I was stuck with this filmmaker down low in this area, and he was in critical condition. He had slipped and fell on a rock, and at that point I thought he had fractured his hip. Apparently it turns out he didn't later, but I thought he had fractured his hip. But to call upon my Mustangs, where I had to scout a way out of there, it was really great. Like my lead horse Chileno, like I just jumped on him and I just took off. I left all the other horses behind. We went out, we scouted. He was right there with me every step of the way. He would have preferred to be with his herd, but he was like, all right, I know that you need me right now, like I'll keep it together. And we found this route to evacuate out of there, where there was actually a helipad up on top, but in order to get up it was like these huge kind of moss overgrown boulders that had kind of caved in this ravine. And like the whole photo at the bottom shows like this guy like climbing through this route. And so I pointed Chileno up it, and sure enough he just started like bouldering for a horse, essentially. Like he jumped up, and they'd have to collect all 4 feet together and then jump up to the next ledge and the next ledge and the next ledge. And we did that in the daylight first time. Got service up top, just wanted to see if it was possible to get out of there. So we go back down, we get our filmmaker and the horses loaded up and everything, and it's now dark by the time that this happens, and so we only have like our tiny little headlamps going. And my filmmaker at the time didn't ride very much, and I was like, all right, you just gotta trust your horse. Like, this horse has more mountain time and experience than most humans ever will in their life. Like, you really have to trust him. And I was like, just grab high on the mane and just hold on. Like, you can't hold on to the saddle horn, because like your center of gravity, just, you have to be up higher in order to make those lurches. And we're in the pitch black, and I mean, my entire Mustang team just rocked it and went right up those rocks, and 3 of them had never seen it before, and they went up it in the dark. And I don't know how many horses could have gotten us out of that situation had it not been good, hardy Mustangs. And one thing that I think Mustangs hold a edge on versus domestics is once you finally get that bond with them, they'll do just absolutely anything for you. And I've only been involved in Mustangs for 8 years. I grew up training and riding American quarter horses and American paint horses. And Mustangs, they definitely hold a special, different piece for sure versus any domestic. And so that's why I think that they're really valuable, and especially mental health wise, because like I remember being in those places where like I felt like no one knew what I was going through, and sitting with a therapist, sometimes it just felt like there was an agenda kind of behind that, and that maybe they weren't fully in tune and listening to me. But horses, they don't have any agenda. They don't hold on to anything like that. And so they're very free giving and just transparent, and they're just honest, and they reflect back to you kind of what you're feeling in that moment so authentically that's why they're so powerful in terms of healing, because yeah, they do feel they're sentient beings, and they're just amazing. But yeah. So they've changed my life.
Yeah, I mean, it's so amazing. I mean, I think a lot of people don't really understand the potential of what horses can bring, and hearing how horses like literally saved your life and saved your dog's life too, like by their nature and who they are and the connection that you have with them, and hearing a little bit about the benefit of horses and what they can bring, and now Mustangs too. I was just curious, like, your thoughts on more, what is it about horses, and you're starting to share too, in particular Mustangs. Is there any more about what you think it is about them that they bring that brings this healing, like, to people?
Yeah, I think in order to heal a lot, like, you kind of need a mirror held up to yourself. to kind of look inward and see, like, how am I reacting to the situation? What is my part in all of this? Because, I mean, I was there for a while where I was blaming the world. I was blaming ex-boyfriends for being awful. And, you know, I wasn't really taking in my own accountability or seeing my part into it. But my horses, working with them one-on-one, you know, especially my Mustang mule right now. She's been a trip. I've been training horses a long time, and I've learned way more from that mule than I ever have any horse. But you know, to be more accountable to your emotions and recognize what you're feeling in that moment. I was just talking yesterday with our producer about how horses have helped me in terms of recognizing my own feelings and emotions. And I even video recorded a little bit yesterday, and I have asthma pretty bad, and anytime I get super nervous or anxious, or I'm headed for that anxiety or that panic attack, like, it starts to kind of trigger my asthma, and I'll start coughing and hacking a little bit. And even yesterday, I was sitting there playing with my mule. We were doing some stuff that were really out of both of our comfort zones, and I started to recognize that. So I took a minute and I just stopped, and you know, I kind of put my heart onto hers, and I was just like, okay, we need to take a breath, and we need to, like, calm down. And you know, she took the first deep, like, when I did that, she took the first deep breath, and I took a deep breath, and it was just like, okay, we're in this together. Like, I appreciate you, like, taking this moment with me. And I also, you know, I had to recognize that, like, through my nerves and anxiety, I was building up her nerves and anxiety, because they're herd animals. And so in order to respond in that herd, you know, you tap into this energy. It's like when you watch a flock of birds, you know, they kind of move as a unit, and there could be hundreds or thousands of birds moving. And it's not like there's, like, one little commanding general bird that's like, everyone 35-degree angle turn, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. And, like, that's not happening. It's this energy that happens where it's kind of flowing through all of the birds. And when you're with horses, you get to touch that a little bit. It's this energy that's just this kind of unseen connection that you can have with them. And so, you know, their herd instincts and herd survival is to watch that lead mare. Like, what is she saying that we need to do? You know, if she makes a move, the whole herd moves. If one turns, they all turn. And so, working with horses, we kind of establish that we're more of the alpha, and they need to respect us a little bit. And so, like, they start tuning in and looking to us. But when it comes to training Mustangs in particular, you know, if you're nervous and your anxiety is up, they're like, I don't trust the situation. Like, what should I be nervous and anxious about? And you kind of have to teach yourself and tell yourself and work towards being a little bit more calmer and relaxed and taking that leadership role. But back to, you know, meditating a little bit, it's that ownership over your own emotions and how that's building and compounding with that relationship with that horse. Because I mean, you don't have to tell a horse that you're anxious or anything. Like, they know. But if you're happy and you're having a good day, a lot of times your horse is happy and having a good day, because they're tapping into that same energy realm that's kind of between you two. And I think that's what makes them most powerful, is because they're just so honest and transparent, and holding up that mirror to you. They're like, all right, what should I be anxious and worried about, you know, if you're anxious and worried? And it's just so great to see that relationship come out without you know, any hidden agenda. Or you don't always feel that way with other humans, because I think because we do think so much more and we aren't so honest in all of our transactions, that there's that barrier of trust, where I feel like there was still a wall. Like, you could look, at least for me and my therapist, I felt like we could look over that wall really great and have a conversation, but it still existed, where as the horses, I don't feel like there's that wall or barrier there, because they are so transparent as to what's going on in that particular situation. So
Yeah, I think that was a lot of good, like, the connection, the relationship, a lot of healing, especially for mental health. Our emotional health comes through relationships, and to have that kind of relationship with an animal that is, you know, themselves, and they're transparent, like you said, and they do help us see ourselves in a way that doesn't seem to happen even with other people, or I think even other animals. It's something unique about horses. And so it's cool that you've devoted and committed so much of your life and passion to helping the Mustangs. Is there like, what is it about what you're hoping to achieve, or what are you hoping to achieve with what you're doing?
So first and foremost, I mean, I wouldn't be here without my Mustangs, and it's really sad to me that these horses have been rounded up off their range. They've been taken away from possibly everyone that they knew and everything that they knew, and now they're forced essentially to stand stagnant in these holding pens where that's really not a good life for a horse that's come off the range. I mean, they know what it's like to be free. They know what it's like to just be able to run as much and stretch your legs as much as you want. They aren't necessarily like the domestics where they were born in the stall and they know no different than the domestic way of living. And it's hard for them, and it was kind of that way for me coming off the ranch. It was hard. As a kid, I was pretty much told that I could go do whatever I want and just show up for dinner. And I mean, you could ride all day, like even on my four-wheeler, I could just go out and ride it all day and like never hit the end of our property. And so I felt like I had that similarity with those Mustangs. And it is hard to have to change your life so drastically and be forced into this different society and this different way of life. But each horse deserves a chance at a good, loving home. And they do hold so much power. There's so many people out there that could use these horses. And so it's definitely my goal to try to facilitate more of those win-win situations where it's a win for the wild horse and it's a win for that human that may need some help there. But I definitely don't think everyone should just go adopt a wild horse and go at it, willy-nilly. There's a lot to be learned through working with wild horses, but how do we do that in safe and facilitated situations? So how do we get those veterans suffering like PTSD and maybe with some suicidal tendencies to come out and work with horses in a safe environment where the horse is learning and the veteran's learning? How do we get these people that are in prisons who really don't see a way out to interact with these horses and start to build up some responsibility? And even trade work, being able to get out of prison and have a job where you could go shoe horses or you could do leather work or smithing or even colt starting. So it's just amazing all the different ways that these horses can go. And I'm so excited to be a part of that because there's so many success stories out there surrounding these horses. And I want to help facilitate more of that to the point where there's more of a demand of wild horses than what we can provide essentially. And so how do we change and shape shift this from there's way too many horses and the government is just trying to give them away as quickly as possible to no, they're a necessary part of our society. They do belong in the wild, but there's an excess number of them, and how do we help that excess number also help our culture now, because so much has changed for the horses over the course of these last few centuries, and so much have changed for humans over the last few centuries. So how do we build those win-win situations for everyone involved?
Yeah, I totally agree. There's a need for the horses and especially the Mustangs, and then a need with humans, and bring it together. And it is transforming lives. There's programs out there transforming lives in incredible ways for both the horses and the humans, and it's amazing. And it'll be great to keep expanding that. And there's so much need. Let's bring it together. So.
Yeah. Sorry. Zendi, get out. I figured him chewing the stick so close.
Yeah.
Not great. Yeah, so tell me about your organization and where you guys are headed.
Yeah, well, again, I'm so excited to be part of this with you and to share awareness about what you're doing and the power of Mustangs, and to bring more Mustangs to more people. And we're doing through Horses for Mental Health, we're about awareness and advocating for this type of work, because it is changing lives and can change lives in ways that nothing else can. So we're really excited about that. We're actually doing an annual Seen Through Horses campaign is what it's called, to bring that awareness, and really excited for you to be a part of that and spread the word. And it's exciting because Seen Through Horses is a lot of healing, and is about people feeling seen and heard. And I think the horses feeling seen and heard too. And so through that healing, we're hoping that we'll get this message out to the world about the power of this work. So that's what we're doing, and I'm honored to be a part of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's been really great crossing the country because back to, again, feeling like you're not alone. Like, there's such a large need for this, and need for the horses, particularly to help address mental health issues, because it is definitely, I feel like, an epidemic going on right now. That's and there's still a lot of taboo surrounding it, just talking about it, and so kind of abolishing that taboo around it and being able to talk, and being able to address mental health. I even see it in my mule. I mean, there's some animals out there that they have their own issues and PTSD from bad situations, and how do you bring them out and give them confidence? Abilene was a lot like a foster child, in terms of, like, she'd just been passed around a whole bunch of times, and she wouldn't really get close to any of the other horses. I think, one, because, like, she understands that she's different. She's not fully horse and she's not fully donkey, and how does that compromise? But she's like, why invest in something when I'm just going to be moving down the road anyways? And being on the trail for a year with her, she's completely changed. But I did unfortunately send her to a trainer, and it was another bad experience for her, and she came back to me and she's very depressed and very hollow, and I feel horrible for putting her in that situation. But after just a couple weeks of being back on the trail, she was like, oh, this is my family. Like, I'm so happy to be back. Like, she really invested back into the horses, and it's cool to see them kind of evolve, like, in their own herd, essentially. Because it's so cool. We're traveling across the country. We ride most every day. And it replicates a lot of what they had in the wild. Like, they're a band, and they get to move together into these new places every day, and they're just so happy to be together. And when I first started out, like, Chileno, who I mainly ride, my buckskin, and Abilene, my mule, just hated each other. And I felt like they had, like, this compromise of, like, Chileno wouldn't kick her if she didn't bite him, kind of thing. And they just hated each other. And there was one point where Abilene ran away across the Dolly Sods in West Virginia, and Chileno and I took off after her for 2.5 miles, chasing her, like, through this wilderness. And he could be a fox hunting horse after that, but Chileno just kind of felt like she doesn't want to be with us. Like, just let her go, you know? And Abilene didn't trust me at that point, and so she didn't trust my leadership that I would keep her safe, and she felt like she needed to get to safety. And so now that's completely evolved, though. It made me cry the other day. I was sitting just watching my horses, and Chileno's kind of the top dog on my herd, and Abilene's the bottom of the herd. And they started grooming each other, and I'd never seen them groom each other, and that just melted my heart. But my Mustang Finn, he's kind of the glue of the whole herd dynamics, and he's always been good friends with Abilene, even from the very beginning of this trip. And, you know, he's also kind of like the nerdy cool kid, where, like, the jocks kind of like having the nerdy cool kid around. And so he was kind of, I felt like Finn helped facilitate that barrier where if Abilene ever needed a friend when she felt outcasted from the jocks of the herd, Finn was there for her. And it's just cool to see, like, now they're one more cohesive unit instead of just being separate individuals. And it's been so rewarding. We're in Utah right now. We're back out on public land, and it's so cool. Like, I can turn Abilene completely loose. When I was traveling alone, I didn't have the fence set up because it's so heavy. I wasn't packing it. So I kind of do a rotational thing, and I was able to turn Abilene completely loose, like, back onto thousands of acres of BLM land, and for her to come, like, join the herd and come back to me, that was just incredible. But it's taken such a long time. You know, these mental health fixes, they just aren't instantly and overnight. You know, it's a lot of time of repetition and slowly learning to trust each other, and trust in yourself more, and trust the process. And my mule, she has taught me a lot, that's for sure.
Well, I mean, speaking of evolution, I mean, this is incredible what you're writing from the east to the west, 5,000 miles, and an incredible, inspiring, odd, like, not most people would never do this in their lifetime, of course.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, as far as evolution and seeing your horses evolve over this trip, like, how have you evolved emotionally or in any way through this journey?
Yeah, this journey has taught me a lot more about living in the moment. I think a lot of, like, my severe anxiety came from, like, being panicked about the future and everything going wrong all the time and nothing was ever going to work out. And then that was very depressive to think about nothing ever working out. And it's just this bad cycle to be in. And on this trip, I can't do that. I can't think too far ahead. Otherwise, it stresses me out too much. Or I can't plan for a lot, because this trip has shown me that as soon as you make a plan of something, it does not go according to plan, and now you're readjusting. And so it's actually better to start out your day without a plan. You have a general idea of what you want to do that day, but how do you survive like whatever that moment throws at you? And it's taught me to be a lot more in the moment, appreciate every moment, whether it's good or bad. The bad moments lead to better moments, and you have to appreciate those better moments when you're in the bad moments. And so that really has changed. I've been mentally tested a lot, where what I maybe previously thought wasn't possible, or oh no way, I'd never do that, getting back to just a basic sense of survival, where like you have to focus on water, which was a huge debacle just a few weeks ago for me, but shelter and food for your horses. My horse is number one, probably my dog's number two, and then the humans number three. And traveling with a team and a crew, and there's 4 horses, that's a lot of water. But just getting back to basics, essentially, of like just existing. You need food, water, and shelter just like any other animal out there. But you get back to those basics and it really grounds you. It puts you in tune a lot more with what you are actually capable of when maybe the hammer hits, kind of deal, that moment. Whereas before, maybe I had a lot more anxiety about worst case scenarioing like everything, of like, oh, no one will care about what I'm, like before I started this project, I was like, oh, no one will care about what I'm doing, like, and there were so many people that told me not to do it. Yesterday we were talking about my family and friends. They would invite me to lunch, and there was always a hidden agenda at whatever lunch I was invited to, of some angle of trying to talk me out of doing this trip. And in a way, though, like, because it was something that's so fragile, and it is such a fragile idea, to do something so big without any like grounding or basis for a lot of it, I had to be careful with that in my mental health. Like I didn't want to tell anyone about it until I was a lot more sure of myself of actually doing it. And so once I had made up my mind, though, that I was going to do it and I was just going to ride it out, that's when I started telling like my family and the people who I knew wouldn't be as supportive of it maybe so much. And so yeah, it's how do you protect yourself in those moments of vulnerability, because it is so scary to go into the unknown, but it's so rewarding. There's a lot of sacrifices that go into being on the trail for a year. I do really miss my family. I'm from a beautiful part of Wyoming, and so learning to appreciate that a lot more with all the places I've been. But I've also just been humbly surprised by so much too. There's so many amazing places across this country, and that was one thing going into this again, like trying to keep my mental health in check is not setting up a lot of expectations. And so being open to whatever is going to happen or come, that was a little hard and a little challenging. But I'm so happy that I really tried to keep an open mind, because I have met some of the most amazing people across this country. I couldn't do this without people as much as sometimes I would like to. I was door knocking most every night across the East Coast. So how do you go up and just knock on someone's door and be like, can we set up our tent in your yard and put all of our horses out here for a night? Like, you have to be so trusting and putting yourself out there. But through that, like, I've healed so much more through opening myself up and being able to talk about these things, whereas previously I did feel like I was alone and no one would understand what I was going through, and so I wouldn't talk about it, and I harbored a lot of it. But being able to let it out, and let it go, once you let it out, you can like let it go, and it leaves you feeling lighter. even. It's really incredible, and being open to different ways of doing things. I was under a lot of stress, and I kind of feel like after I came out of the desert, after we went through this huge water debacle, it was this whole thing, and I feel like I had a delayed vision come to me the next few nights, and like these things kept visiting me in my dreams, and I wasn't so sure and certain about them. And so the next place that I stayed, they actually had teepees, and they would do drum circles and different things. And so I opened myself up to a drum circle or a drum ceremony deal, and that was so helpful and uplifting. And you know, the drums kind of open up your cells and everything. And I felt like for hours after that I was just like vibrating in a way, but it was like a good wave of kind of letting out a lot of things that I've harbored in my body energy wise, and being able to break that up and let it go. It's just, yeah. I didn't have anything visit me for a while after that. That felt good too. But yeah, you know, it's just the incredible experiences. But unless you're willing to like take that chance and open up and maybe reach out to someone and say like, hey, I'm having problems, like I need help, what do I do now? But it's so scary to admit, at least for me, like I was raised with this idea of like impossible perfection, you know, where you have to be perfect in everything you do. And it's so scary to admit that like you don't know what you're doing, you don't know how to go about it, and to reach out for help. And so many people have so many good intentions for everyone else, but the reality is you can't help people who don't want to be helped. Like this is why rehab doesn't work for everyone, is because a lot of those people get put in there by other people with good intentions, but until that person is ready to help themselves, it's not going to work. And so how do we break down those barriers though, where people are willing to humble themselves enough to be like, I can't do this alone and I do need help?
Yeah, I was thinking as you're sharing that, just that the courage to take that first step, even though it doesn't make sense. Yeah. And everybody is saying, don't do that. And, you know, you in your story willing to take, and then just take the next step, and then the next step, and knowing that it's a journey. And how doing that and sharing our story along the way, like your story is so inspiring, and sharing that and how we feel lighter. And I think when you shared that is one of the things that I find being around horses and doing this type of work with clients and with mental health needs and struggles, and just somehow just interacting and engaging with the horses, something changes. Like, I know I feel like when you said that, I was like, yeah, I feel lighter after I've been around them. And somehow that then fills my cup to do, like, encounter the next thing and go to the next thing. But there's just that something about that relationship and connection of being willing to have that courage, sharing our stories, and having that in relationship and connection with the horses. I don't know, there's something inside that changes. And myself, I've experienced it, and I see it in so many people and so many clients. It changes something. It's not even about the talk.
Right.
Just something shifts, you know?
Yeah, and I think horses, like, yes, we can crawl on their backs and they can literally carry us physically, but I was just at Steadfast Steeds outside of Grand Junction in Colorado, and they use nothing but Mustangs in their therapy program. And the gal was talking about all the success that they had with their horses and the humans, but she was noticing kind of a decline in her horse's mental health. And she had actually reached out to someone who told her that particular horse felt like he was having to take on the burdens and absorb everything from all these people. And he was the favorite therapy horse because, like you said, like people walked away feeling so much lighter. But this horse had, in a way, like internalized and felt like he needed to carry those people's burdens to help him. And she said that she needed to start telling that horse, like, yes, absorb, but let it go back to the ground. Like, let it flow out of you and through you. Like, you are allowed to, like, carry it just for the brief second, but let it go. And now every time, like, after a therapy session with her horses, like, before she puts them away, she has a moment with them where she tells them to, like, be like, thank you for your work. Now it's time to let that burden go. And pretty incredible, though, to kind of hear that, where, like, that horse is absorbing some of that negative energy from the human, leaving the human lighter, but now that horse has to take that energy and disperse of it. but I say it all the time, they're just such incredible horses. It's hard to adequately portray exactly what they do unless you've experienced it. And it's how do you get people to it? How do you get those skeptics to really buy into it and experience it without ever partaking in it? Because that's one of the biggest battles for everyone, is just funding for these programs. And there's so many people willing to get behind great ideas, but how do you put these great ideas into people's hands and minds and hearts and souls until they've tried it? So it's having that courage to be vulnerable enough to admit, like, maybe not everything is perfect in life as you've tried to portray it to everyone on the outside, but how do you get that to kind of come in and connect and just be humbled by the experience and opening yourself up.
Yeah.
Tune in to part 2 of this chat between Lisanne and Lynn as we prepare for a Mustang ride through Bryce Canyon. If you'd like to know more about the ride, please visit www.mustangdiscovery.com. If you'd like to support the upcoming documentary or docuseries, please visit jamediaconnections.com. We really do appreciate your support.